I now give the floor to the representative of Syrian Arab Republic.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the Syrian Arab Republic was among the first countries that joined the optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child on the Involvement of Children in Armed Conflict, and has consistently fulfilled its obligations towards it. Moreover, in 1996, Syria joined the list of countries that adopted the General Assembly Resolution number 51/77, establishing the mandate of the Special Representative on Children in Armed Conflict. And in line with our obligations, the state of Syria has, and over the past years, adopted a group of laws and legislation on the protection of and care for children. In 2013, we endorsed a law that amended the penal code to criminalize the recruitment of children and involving them in combat, and instating a national plan to deal with the children who have been victims of recruitment. Moreover, in 2021, Law number 21 was issued on the rights of the child, which aims to enhance the state's role in the protection of children and in their care. Mr. President, during the years of the terrorist war that was imposed on Syria, the Syrian government has been engaged in a serious and earnest cooperation with the United Nations and its representatives, including those that are tasked with the mandate of caring for children and armed conflict. And we have sent hundreds of official letters that show the extent of the crimes and grave violations perpetrated by terrorist militias and organizations with the support and direct involvement of their sponsors. These violations included recruiting large numbers of children to the ranks of these organizations and brainwashing them with extremist terrorist ideology. Matters did not stop at that point. Children who were displaced by terrorism were subject to the most heinous of violations in some of the displacement camps. And these include forced marriage and child marriage and recruitment, child labor, sexual violence, and falling victim in the hands of human trafficking networks. Our delegation has consistently provided the SRSG with comments and observations on the sections pertaining to Syria in her reports. However, none of these comments were mentioned in those reports. The Special Representative of the Secretary General has intentionally ignored our concerns and the data we provided. She has adopted an extremely hostile approach that is not in line with the objectivity and professionalism requisite in her mandate. And this could be in an attempt to divert the attention of the international community away from the true identity of the perpetrators of these crimes, namely the terrorist militias and organizations and their operators in the Israeli occupation entity and the U.S. forces and the Turkish forces that are illegally present in the territory of our country. Mr. President, a few days ago, the Special Representative announced that she had signed an agreement with an armed terrorist organization called the Syrian National Army and two terrorist entities that are allied with it, who are the organizations of Ahrar al-Sham and Jaish al-Islam, under the pretext of protecting children in the areas where these organizations operate. This at a time when these terrorist organizations continue to perpetrate all sorts of grave violations against children, including killing and maiming, sexual violence, forced marriage, the marriage of minors, torture, kidnapping, and conscription, not to mention their use of extremist curricula as a replacement or to replace official educational curricula, which is the most dangerous of all. These organizations are working under a large umbrella of impunity provided for it by their sponsors, at the forefront of which are the Turkish regime, the U.S. administration, which to this very day continues to prevent listing the Jaish al-Islam and Ahrar al-Sham terrorist entities on the Security Council's terrorist list. These armed terrorist organizations that have multiple names and multiple allegiances have perpetrated, and this comes in addition to the crimes perpetrated by Jabhat al-Nusra and the terrorist Daesh organization perpetrated the most heinous of crimes and violations during the terrorist war on Syria. And it will be truly naive to expect such criminal organizations to fulfill any pledges that they make to the Special Representative. This was evident in the case of the previous agreement that she concluded with the treasonous collaborators Qasad militias who work with the U.S. forces in northeastern Syria in 2019, which was then the subject of a promotional campaign that claimed that it would put an end to the recruitment of children and their use by militias. Can we expect terrorist militias to give us guarantees in this department, Mr. President? The Qasad militias continue to detain children and conscript them. It continues to detain tens of thousands of others in illegitimate and inhumane detention centers in areas under its control, such as the prisons of Ghouiran and Al-Hol and Al-Rouj and other such camps. Mr. President, this new so-called agreement, as is the case with its predecessors, is in no way in the interest of the child, as the Special Representative claims. Rather, it provides cover to these terrorist organizations and separatist militias so that they could continue violating human rights. And this is merely a miserable and suspicious attempt to offer some sort of recognition or legitimacy to terrorist organizations and separate militias, an attempt to polish their hideous reputation and criminal record, to promote them and to cover up their crimes. Mr. President, the position of the Special Representative throughout the 9 months of the genocidal war and unprecedented violations that the children of the Gaza Strip have been subjected to by the Israeli occupying forces confirms to us that she is overstepping her mandate, and this has been manifest clearly in the briefing that she gave to the Security Council on the 3rd of April, which required urgent action by the group of Arab states to object to her unacceptable behavior and her intentional violation of her mandate and her attempt to cover up the repercussions of the practices of the Israeli occupation on children. She attempted to dismiss over 7 decades of crimes perpetrated by the occupying Israeli entity against children in the occupied Palestinian territories and in the occupied Syrian Golan. In closing, Mr. President, the Syrian Arab Republic renews its commitment towards the protection of the rights of the child and their promotion and providing the appropriate and adequate environment for their healthy upbringing. We will continue to provide all efforts necessary to care for them despite the great challenges that we are facing because of the practices of some Western states that sponsor terrorism and unilateral coercive measures imposed on it. Syria looks forward to support its efforts by receiving support to the rehabilitation of civilian structures that have been damaged, including schools and hospitals, and by giving sector support to children with cancer and children who have fallen victim to landmines planted by terrorist organizations and children with disabilities, so that we can provide a better future for our generations where they can live in peace and harmony. I thank you, sir.